Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another Northeast Outdoors video. Hope you're having a great day today. Yes, the stash is gone. Had to make the audible, cut her off. She was getting a little long. That's okay. Today I'm going to be talking about how to use a spinnerbait. I'm going to be talking about locations, structures, time of year, all the stuff that plays into how good a spinnerbait is going to work for you for a specific day, specific location, all of that good stuff. Now, just like in my jig fishing video, I'm going to be throwing in a bunch of clips here and there just to give you more insight into what I'm actually doing instead of you just watching me sit in this car and yap all day. Also, there's going to be chapters down the timeline so you can get whatever you want out of this video. However, as always, I do suggest watching the whole thing to get the most out of this video, as I'll be putting in random tips and tricks, videos, clips, all throughout this whole video. So I promise you'll find it useful. Now, first things first, I'm going to go over the types of spinnerbaits. Starting off with the smallest blade, we're going to have the willow leaf blade. These put out less vibration than the other two. Spinnerbaits aren't a subtle presentation, but the willow leaf is the most subtle it gets. This is the Colorado. You can see it's more of a teardrop, wider presentation. This is gonna spin around more water. It's gonna put more vibration throughout the water. It's gonna let the fish know you're there. Now, in between these two, I actually don't own this one, but it's an Indiana blade. This is pretty much the middleman between these two. It's your compromise. There's different scenarios where each of those are gonna shine, and I'll be going each and every one of those in this video. Now, as far as blade color goes, you see I got silver and I got gold right here. Silver and gold are gonna be your most common blade colors. These are gonna be best for clear water presentations, gonna be best for sunny days where it can really just shine. The sun's gonna be hitting that silver and gold. It's gonna just shine all over the water column while that thing's spinning around. It's gonna make your presentation very attractive. Now, like I said, silver and gold is best for clear water where the fish are gonna be able to actually see the color, see the shine, and it's gonna do a very good job at presenting what looks like a small school of bait fish. Now, silver is gonna be your go-to for very clear water. Gold is better for your waters a little bit dingier, but you can still see a pretty decent way through it. Other than your metallic colored blades, you have your colored blades. Now, these are gonna be best for dirtier water where the fish aren't really gonna be seeing the color of it as much as the presence it gives off. So say if you're fishing some absolute chocolate milk, you can just put on something with a black blade. That'll contrast with the water better and it'll make it easier for the fish to find your bait. Also, in dirtier water, there's gonna be less light penetration, so the shine that your blade gives off isn't really gonna matter as much. Now, as far as body color goes, you can really just throw whatever you want. You're gonna follow the basic rules of fishing. Now, personally, I think white is the best all around. Something like this. I just think it shows itself the best in clear water. You can still see it very well in dirty water. And it's something that the fish will just hit year round. Now, this has been my favorite spinnerbait so far. It's got white blades, white body, and it kind of tapers down into a chartreuse green and a red. Kind of gives me all the colors I'd ever throw all in one spinnerbait, which is just perfect. Now, red and green work very well. That's because bass can really see red and green the best. They can't see the entire color spectrum like we can. So red's probably gonna be one of the best colors that a bass can see. Red's gonna be your color that you're throwing for reaction strikes, maybe in the spring when the craws are emerging and they're kind of just eating red stuff already. It's really gonna catch their attention when you're running it through the water. And it's gonna stand out against what's probably to them looking like a very pale background. They're gonna see something red and they're gonna say, oh, I'm gonna go check that out. Now, green's the other one they can see, but green's gonna be, again, spinnerbaits aren't subtle, but green's gonna be a more subtle presentation. That's because a lot of bluegill, crawfish, all that are already like green. So they already see a lot of green within their natural world. So if you're throwing that, it's gonna imitate something they're already eating and seeing a lot. Can't really go wrong with it. And it's just a pretty good choice all around. If you're in very dirty water, again, you can use white, chartreuse, anything that's a bright color that'll really stand out in the dark water. You can also go for a dark color, such as maybe black, anything that's gonna contrast with the water. It's gonna be darker than the water you're fishing. You really just need to contrast any dirty water. That's the best way that the fish are gonna find your bait, other than the blade giving off whatever vibration it's gonna give. Now, as far as trailers go, I don't really use trailers on spinnerbaits. I usually just throw them as is. I find that I get plenty of bites with no trailer. And I haven't experimented much with the trailer, but I haven't really seen a big difference in it, so I don't bother. I think it's mostly up to personal preference, but one scenario where I will put on a trailer is, say my skirt breaks or falls off and I don't just want to throw that spinnerbait away. I'll put like a paddle tail or something onto it just to give it a little more meat since that skirt's gone. Another scenario you could do this is, say you're fishing some really dirty stuff and you want to make your presentation a little more big. You want to spit out a little more water in each direction. Put on some type of paddle tail or something that's going to kick through that water. And that'll help in having the fish find your bait. Now, if you are going to use a trailer, use something that has action as it swims. So don't put on like a stick bait, like a Senko. That's not going to do anything for you. It's just going to look weird. Put on something like a paddle tail that's going to kick its tail as it goes through the water. Or you can even put on like a ribbon tail worm or a craw, something that's going to just move while it swims. Another thing you can do as far as the trailer section, you can put on a trailer hook. Now, a lot of people say fish will short strike their spinnerbaits, which means they're gonna hit the back end of your spinnerbait or maybe the very top of it or something like that. They're not gonna hit exactly where the one hook is. So something you can do to help that out is just put on a trailer hook, which is gonna look like this. You got your one hook up here, you got a little piece of plastic that's holding that trailer hook on. You got your trailer hook below the other hook. So when it swims, you can see there's more of an area for them to hit and therefore get hooked. And then you'll also have two hooks that can potentially get into the fish, so you're not relying on one hook holding your potential PB onto your spinnerbait. Again, that's just a preference, but it's something that can help out. Now, as far as setups go, you don't really need to be too picky with it. I think the thing that matters the absolute most in something like a spinnerbait setup is gonna be the rod. You don't want a flimsy light action rod to be throwing a bait around that's gonna be pushing a lot of water and therefore dragging your line and everything through. If you put a spinnerbait onto like a light rod, you're gonna see your light rod is gonna be bent halfway down already, and that is not what you want. So I throw this on a medium heavy rod. This is 6'6" fast action. It's rated for 10 to 20 pounds and it's 3/8 to a 1 ounce lure. I really don't think all that poundage and whatnot matters all too much, but I put this on 12-pound line. I think the absolute lightest you should go with a spinnerbait is 10-pound. You're gonna get some pretty vicious strikes on some spinnerbaits when you're rolling these around. And if you have light line on, like 8-pound, like a pickerel or a big bass or something's gonna come up and just absolutely nail that thing. And before your drag can even engage, your line's just gonna be in absolute shock and it's gonna just snap. And that is not what you want. You don't want to leave your baits in fish's mouths, and you don't want to lose your baits. You also don't want to lose a fish. So don't be silly and put on some 12, 15-pound line. I don't think you need to go over 15, but definitely put on some decent line. Now, as far as the reel goes, I do not think it matters all that much. I have my Shimano Metanium on, DC. Something with a pretty average gear ratio is gonna work well. Low gear ratio might be a pain when you're trying to reel that spinnerbait a little faster. High gear ratio is gonna be a pain when you're trying to reel a little slower. So something right in the middle is gonna be the sweet spot for something like a spinnerbait setup. This rod I use for pretty much every moving bait, like crankbaits, spinnerbaits, jerkbaits, all that type of stuff. So really just use something that is good for everything. Now, as far as the location where you're gonna be fishing goes, you're gonna just follow the basic rules of fishing pretty much. If you see any logs, laydowns, trees, obviously throw your spinnerbait along that structure. You don't want to throw it right through the middle like you would a jig or something though, because your spinnerbait hook is not concealed like it is in a jig. You're gonna get hung up pretty easily if you're throwing it into thick stuff. Now you can, if there's like a single log or like maybe a couple branches, you can throw it right over those. It'll bounce off of them. It's kind of made to do that. But if you're throwing it in some really thick laydowns, like you'll probably get hung up and you'll end up losing some lures. You can fish this around big boulders and stuff too. Like I said, with the logs, you have the ability to bounce that spinnerbait off of whatever you're fishing. Say if you throw this around the edge of a boulder, you can bounce it off the edges and this will create a good reaction strike for anything that's around it. Drop-offs are another very good place to throw some spinnerbaits. You can either be in a boat casting towards shore, bringing it off the drop-off. You can be inshore casting it out, bringing it in past the drop-off, or even better, if you can get right along the drop off, you say if this is the shore, this is the drop off, you get your spinnerbait lined up, cast it right down the middle, and you can reel it right in through the sweet spot. Now drop-offs work very well because bass like to be underneath their prey. So they're gonna sit in the bottom of this drop-off when the shore is up here. You're gonna be reeling in your spinnerbait up here. They're gonna see that thing and then they go bang, smoke it. If you're already playing into what they wanna do, you're gonna get a lot more hits. This is especially true for fall and spring because this is the time of year where they're transitioning from deep water to shallow water. So if you can cover as much water depth as possible in one area, you're gonna be doing a lot more than if you're to just walk around blindly. Now, weed beds are a very good place to fish in the summer. During the spring, when there's not as much vegetation, there's not too many lily pads, they're gonna hold pretty tight to logs and stuff. But when that vegetation starts coming up, it's gonna be a big magnet for every type of fish. So if you see a big weed bed, especially when they're first developing, just take your spinnerbait and throw it right over the top of them. Especially if it's in like 8 feet of water, that's gonna be perfect. So say if you got your weed bed down here, probably your grass comes up 2 feet, your bass will sit right above the bottom, but right under that weed bed line. You're gonna sit here, be looking up, waiting for something to swim right on over it. So say if you roll your spinnerbait over it, it's the same thing as a drop off. They're gonna look up, see it, smoke it. This is what they do when they're trying to target bluegill or something. They'll just sit, wait for some sunfish to swim over them. They won't even know they're there. And then all of a sudden they're in something's stomach. So again, if you cast your bait where these fish are already looking, you're gonna get a lot more bites. Now, same thing goes for lily pads. You fish them slightly differently, but when the lily pads start first forming, once the spring is going into summer, it's gonna be a really good spot to target some bass because it's gonna be new structure for them and they're gonna be really interested in it. So bass usually sit pretty high up, closer to the lily pads, probably like a foot or two under them in my experience. So if you take your spinnerbait and you roll it around the edge of these lily pads, you're gonna wanna keep it pretty high up in the water column, maybe like a foot or two down where they are. And they're gonna see it from under these lily pads and they're gonna go flying out from under it and whack your spinnerbait. Obviously, do not throw your spinnerbait through the middle of the lily pads. You're gonna get hung up within seconds and you're gonna scare every fish off that is under those lily pads. So don't be doing that. Now, another thing with lily pads that's a good benefit for the fish is in the summer during the heat, it provides a good amount of shade for them. It also protects them from any predators like birds or anything. So if the birds are coming up, they're looking down, they can't see them. Bass know that, so they'll sit under these lily pads and they'll pretty much just congregate under them. So you're gonna find a pretty good density of fish under the right set of lily pads. So never skip over a good set of lily pads. As far as throwing spinnerbaits in different water conditions, personally, I believe you can fish them in just about anything. They're very versatile. You can fish them from pristine spring water to an absolute chocolate milk river. The only difference is the size of your blades and the color you want to pick. So for very clear water, if you remember, like I said in the beginning, willow leaf blades are gonna put out a lot less vibration. They're gonna put out a lot less disturbance. So in that very clear water where they might be a little bit spookier and they don't need all that big vibration, you're gonna wanna throw something that's a little more subtle. So your willow leaf presentation is gonna be what you wanna throw out. In very clear water, gold and silver blades are gonna do very well. If you throw something natural like a white body, a green body, anything that matches what they're already eating at the moment, you're gonna be doing very good. You're gonna put yourself in a great position. For stained water that isn't all the way dirty, but it's not completely clear, a gold blade is gonna do very well. The Indiana type of blade is gonna do very well. It's gonna be the good middle between your Colorado blade that spits out a ton of water and your willow leaf blade that keeps a pretty tight vibration and doesn't spit out too much water. Now, as far as color goes, when you're in this middle ground, I don't think it matters too much what you throw. Always try to match what they're eating. It's gonna depend a lot on the water you're fishing. If you think you should be throwing a darker color, go for that so they can see it better. If you think that you should be fishing a lighter color for reactions or for visibility for the fish, go for that. But if you're seeing a lot of bluegill, sunfish swimming around, I'd just go for something that matches their color pattern pretty well. Now for very dirty water, like I said, the Colorado blade is gonna be your go-to. This is gonna put out a ton of vibration. It's gonna help the fish locate exactly where your bait is. It's probably gonna be your best bet for anything that is more than stained. Now, unless you're fishing just under the surface, you're gonna wanna use a colored blade. Your shine with the blade isn't gonna matter all that much because the light visibility in dark water is a lot less. So throw something with some color to it, maybe a dark blade, maybe a very light blade, anything like that will work. Same thing goes for the body of your spinnerbait. Throw something dark or very light so it contrasts the water. And that way the fish are gonna have an even easier time finding your bait. Now, spinnerbaits are notoriously good for working in windy conditions, anything where the water is getting moved around a lot. So when it's windy out, make sure you keep your spinnerbaits in mind. Nothing really changes when it's windy. You're keeping the same idea of fishing good structure points. The reason it works very well when it's windy is because all the water is moving around already. There's a lot of stuff going on under the water. So throwing a big vibrating bait isn't gonna put too much disturbance through, and it's gonna seem pretty natural. Now, people say they don't work very well when it's calm out. As fishing goes, there isn't one piece of advice that always works for everything, because I've had some of my best spinnerbait days on very calm and bright days. So always keep a spinnerbait in mind, always try it out. You never know when it's gonna work. Now, as far as retrieval goes, it's very straightforward. You just throw it out, reel it in, let those blades spin it out. You don't want to reel it too slow to where the blades aren't spinning, and you don't want to reel it too fast to where the fish aren't going to catch up to it. Usually how I'm fishing spinnerbaits is I'm reeling it just fast enough to where the blades start spinning, but no faster than what they already need to be moving around the water. If you're in deeper water, you can cast it out, reel it pretty slow. That'll keep it further down in the water column and closer to where the fish are. You can also keep your rod tip down. That'll help your bait get down there better. If you're fishing in shallow water, you want to do pretty much the opposite. You're gonna reel a little bit faster, and you're gonna keep your rod tip up a little more. You don't wanna put your rod tip all the way up, because you still need room to set the hook. So don't put your tip all the way up to where you're not able to bring it back anymore, but keep it a little higher than you would if you were fishing deeper, moderate water. Now, just like I said in the jig fishing video, the best way you're gonna be able to feel all this stuff out is by actually getting out there and fishing. Try going to different water bodies, fishing water bodies with different water clarities, hit all the different structure points that I've been talking about in this video, throw all the different blade styles, blade colors, body colors. Try everything you possibly can. Try it out. Once you start doing this enough, you'll start to pick up what works where, what works when, how it works. And this is gonna be your best way at getting confidence in spinnerbaits. Because the most important thing in fishing is having confidence that something will eat your bait. I don't know if you've ever fished a day where you're just sitting there, you're like, nothing's gonna work, nothing's happening. You seem to catch a lot less fish than if you're sitting there very confident in what you're doing and knowing that eventually you'll get a fish. So again, get out there, get some confidence in your spinnerbaits, put some time on the water, and eventually you won't even need to watch a video like this again. Now, I hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, consider leaving a like, commenting, or subscribing if you're new here. I post twice a week, and I like doing some cool series. I have the pin hunting series where I go around and try to catch every sport fishing award fish in Massachusetts. And I love to put out videos that you guys like to see. So make sure you subscribe to keep up with all that stuff. But as always, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you on the next one.